Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, back again today doing another video. Subject of today's video is going to be a bit different than what I would normally do. Today I'll be talking about Madden 20. That's right, a video game. NFL Madden 20. I play a lot of Madden. I'd say I play every day. I'd say at this point I've played a couple hundred games. I've played with every team, played a couple games with every team. I've played a lot of games with certain teams. My goal is to play with every team against every other team. For reference, that'd be 964 games. I'd say so far I'm about 2 to 300 into that stretch so far. Certain teams I obviously prefer over others, but in playing all these games, I've picked up on a lot of things in the game itself that aren't apparent on the surface. And so today I'm going to be talking about those. Today's video is going to be focused on tips for Madden NFL 20. So number one, I think this is a really good tip for everybody to follow, obviously, because it's on the list. It would be picking a playbook and sticking to that playbook for every game you play and getting to know that playbook really, really well. So for any team that you go in and play with in Madden, they'll have that team's specific playbook for that coach. So if you play with the 49ers, you'll have Shanahan's playbook. If you play with the Vikings, you'll have Mike Zimmer's. If you play with the Eagles, you'll have Doug Peterson's. Um, so for me, I think what's best is to pick one specific playbook for every game. So whichever team you play with, you could pick another team's playbook. So for instance, whenever I play with any team, I choose the Chiefs playbook. So if I'm playing with the Browns, I go over to the Chiefs playbook and pick it. If I'm going to play with the Patriots, I go over and choose the Chiefs playbook and use that. The reasoning for this is I think it's a lot easier to just remember the plays for one playbook and really get used to that so that when you're trying to decide what play you want to choose, it's kind of shorthand and you can easily remember what plays work in certain scenarios. Like if it's third and short or third and long, you kind of have your go-to plays and you don't have to waste a play clock looking through and searching for what you want to choose. And yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And it just makes you a lot more efficient as a play caller and also makes you a lot more in control and situationally aware in certain game scenarios. Uh, Piece of advice number two, set your depth chart properly before the games and then also make substitutions for certain formations. So, what do I mean by this? There's an option to go in and set your depth chart when you are in any game. I would always suggest doing this at the beginning, mainly because how the CPU sets your depth chart may be a lot different from how you want it. I know, like sometimes for certain reasons, maybe the CPU perceives that one player is technically the starter on a team, but a better player is um, after them on the depth chart. So, for instance, I'm trying to think of an example. Like for the uh, for the Browns, I know, for instance, because I play a decent amount of games with the Browns, they have let's see here. They have TJ Carey as their second cornerback. He's like a 71 overall, and they have a Terrence Mitchell who's a 76 overall, and he's third on the depth chart. So for instance, that's one where I always switch them. Or like on the 49ers, they they have it set up weird where like D Ford is like a linebacker instead of a lineman, but if you put him to lineman, you can start Quan Alexander at linebacker, who's way better than who they have currently starting. Or same thing with like the Bears, they have Khalil Mack at linebacker, but if you put him down to defensive end, you can start Leonard Floyd at linebacker, who's a much better player than who they had starting at defensive end. So there's just a lot of scenarios where you can make your team a lot better just by shifting around where the players are starting. So I definitely suggest going through and making sure your depth chart's in order. Um, and then as far as substitutions, on certain plays, I like to have certain receivers set up in a certain way, or like maybe I want a certain receiver in the slot versus out wide. So I'll go in and make substitutions in the formation. Or maybe I want to, if I'm going to pass in the I formation, maybe I want a running back to be the fullback position, so I'll go in and sub them out. It's just good to go in and do that because you can best run your plays when the proper personnel are in the right positions. Okay, on to step number 3, or piece of advice number 3. Audible. Audible, audible, audible. I think I would say at least on half the plays I run or more, I audible based on what the defense or offense comes out with. So for instance, if I'm playing defense and I come out in man coverage and I see that they're in an I formation, I'm going to blitz. So I have to audible to blitz. Or if I'm blitzing and I see that they have 4 or 5 out wide, then I'll probably go into 3-man coverage or 2-man cover sync, which is where you have a bunch of dudes in the middle of the field playing zone. Those are some examples on defense. On offense, if I'm going to run and I have a single back formation, then I see that they are sending like 8 guys on a blitz, then I usually would audible out into a pass or into the shotgun for a pass. Um, let's see here. If I'm going to pass and I have 4 guys out wide and a running back, and I see that the defense is playing really spread out, then I'll usually audible to a run, because then the running back will have a lot of space up the middle to be able to run. So it's just things like that. Um, Besides that, there are a couple of things that you can do that are a little bit more advanced, like you can shift the positions of your defensive line and offensive line. Like if you see a hole on the left side, you can shift your offensive line to the left so that on the snap they'll play more protecting the left side. On defense, you can do the same thing. On defense, you can do things like tell your cornerbacks to sag or to press the receivers. On offense, you can change the hot routes of players so that they run a different route than the play is drawn up for them. Like if you have Tyreek Hill, for instance, and a guy's playing press coverage on him, I would suggest setting him long so then you can just he can fly past him and you can get an easy route to the end zone. So yeah, those are just a couple examples, but I think that those are really good ideas if you're going to try and get to be a little bit more advanced at Madden. Let's see here. Number 4, get used to using the sticks. So on defense, if you use the sticks, you can hit a lot harder and cause a lot more fumbles. On offense, if you use the sticks, it helps in that you can do a lot more juke moves with your offensive players, and you can get a lot of extra yardage based on, either doing a spin move. Well, that's more circle. But if you do like a juke, then you can get maybe an extra 5 yards because you avoid a man, or a touchdown because you're able to avoid the one defender. Yeah, the other day I had a punt return where I had one guy to beat, and I did a juke move with the right stick, and I beat him, and I got to the end zone. So it definitely can pay off big for you. And then the last tip I have here is focus on the run game over the pass game in offense. Madden 20, they specifically made big passing offensive plays a lot harder. Like I'd say, if you air it out, if you air out a big pass where it's like one-on-one and you've got one receiver trying to take on one offensive play, or one receiver trying to take on one quarterback, I'd say you have about 50% chance of incompletion, 25% chance of interception, or maybe 35% chance of interception, and then I'd say 15% chance of catching it. So that means like on a deep pass that's covered, you usually will have like a 15% chance of catching it, basically unless it's DeAndre Hopkins or Travis Kelce or George Kittle. So that being said, I know there's plenty of games where I started playing the game and I wasn't used to this really hard passing system yet, where I would just air it out, and I frequently would have like 3 to 4 interception games. And no lie, I think maybe I've talked about it on the channel before. I've always been a big Ravens fan for like the last 10 years. I played a game with Lamar this year. The Ravens are a really good team in Madden, but I played a game with Lamar this year where I threw 1 touchdown and 8 interceptions. It's just really hard to play a passing offense really well in Madden. What I would suggest is finding a team with a good offensive line. So that would be Cowboys, Eagles, or Ravens, or I'm trying to think of some other one. The Browns actually have a really good running game in Madden 20. even though their offensive line isn't that great. The Chargers are really solid in that respect. So I would suggest finding one of those teams and getting just really good at the running game. And you can actually do it pretty well with any team, but those teams come to mind first. So there you have, guys. Those are my tips for Madden 20. Hope you take them and can learn something from them, and hope you have a good day. Bye.